Rise. Rise has been reworked 6 times, more than any champion in League of Legends history. The man who designed him has publicly said he no longer knows what Rise is supposed to be. This is not a balance problem. This is something else. The word regret isn't really right for what we're talking about today. Riot doesn't regret these champions. They mourn them. There's a difference. A regret is a mistake you wish you hadn't made. A mourning is for something you loved that you can't fix. We're going to look at 6 champions Riot has, in their own words, mourned. The designers have apologized, the dev blogs have admitted defeat, and in one case, they laid the designer off before the rework was finished. Let's start with the man who broke the balance team. These are the champions Riot has admitted, on the record they don't know how to balance. Not we're working on it. Admitted defeat, twice. Rise. Rise is the most reworked champion in League of Legends history. There's a subreddit called r/RiseMains. The members paint themselves blue for selfies. They build trolling Eclipse Manamune in solo queue to drag the win rate down. Inven Global wrote a feature on the subreddit in 2022 that documents members joking, without irony, about drinking blue antifreeze for mana. That's the player base Riot has been mourning for 10 years. Rise has been on the roster since 2009. A machine gun spellcaster who chains combos into himself. Same name on the surface. 6 different champions underneath. In 2017, Riot designer Riot Repertoire wrote this in the dev blog announcing his next gameplay update. This rework is arguably our 3rd or 4th attempt at redefining the Rune Mage, and players have rightfully called us to task for not getting him into a better spot sooner. That was 2017. The reworks haven't stopped. Then in March of that same year, Medler, lead gameplay designer at the time, posted a quick gameplay thoughts update. Someone asked about Rise. He wrote this. Not sure on Rise direction, frankly. Need to put some extended thought into that when time permits. Agree he's certainly a Shen Azir style of problem. Riot has an internal phrase for unfixable kits, Azir style problem. And the first time it shows up in a public dev post, Medler is using it to describe Rise. By 2019, the framing had shifted entirely. Patch 9.12 simplified Rise's kit. Medler's update read, statistically, we're cautiously optimistic this version of Rise will be easier to keep in an okay spot for both pro and regular play at once. We're taking a cautious approach to buffs to him, given how challenging he's been in the past to balance. The goal isn't make him good anymore, it's keep him in an okay spot. White flag. Rise is the test case for the unsolvable problem in League of Legends design. The problem that pro play and solo queue want different champions. Riot solved it for Rise by giving up. Here's the proof. In June 2019, a Riot employee, Hannah, posting on Twitter as Ashio Shujo, accidentally shared a screenshot of an internal balance team conversation. Riot, Jat, and other members of the balance team were openly discussing where to push Rise's win rate. The number they were targeting was 47 to 48%, below average, on purpose. Because if Rise hits 50%, he becomes a problem in pro again. If you've ever queued into a Rise in solo queue and he felt useless, he's been kept that way on purpose. Medler called Rise a Shen Azir style problem. Riot has a name for this category, and they named it after another champion. So let's talk about him. Azir. Azir is the champion who became a noun inside Riot's own offices. Here's the thing about Azir nobody says out loud. Riot has never apologized for him. There's no Reeve 3 essay, no dev blog where someone writes, we're not satisfied with his current state. For a champion this broken, permabanned in pro, useless in solo queue, the silence is the regret. The other champions on this list got dev blogs. Azir got abandoned. Azir released in September 2014. Emperor of Shurima, a mage who summons soldiers from his old empire and commands them across the lane. The Shurima Shuffle, the flash into soldier recall outplay, became one of the most iconic moves in pro play history. In February 2017, Riot Scruffy, a senior gameplay designer at the time, wrote a dev blog called On the Champions of 2016. Azir gets named directly. The type of roam and cut-off plays that she excels at are significantly more powerful in coordinated play, so we will have issues with her being a dominant pro pick whenever she is strong. Azir and Kalista are similar. Her difficulty and the pro problem led to what I'm sure some of you felt as a balance roller coaster after her release. The she in that quote is Talia, who Scruffy is using Azir to explain. Azir isn't being apologized for in this post. He's being used as the cautionary example for the next champion. The lesson Riot took from him is the next sentence. After Talaya, we have started placing a much more scrutinizing eye on if a kit will be overly powerful in professional play, to the detriment of the average player's enjoyment. That's not regret. That's a class taught on a corpse. Riot August, current lead champion designer, has put it more bluntly. Not all or nothing mastery. Something like Azir, where if you don't know how to use all of the skills in combination, you do almost nothing. It's less about don't make complex kits and more about certain types of complexity make for characters that are impossible to pick up. The lead champion designer of Riot Games used Azir as an example of characters that are impossible to pick up. Every complex kit Riot has shipped since 2017 has been measured against him. The phrase Azir-style problem is now the internal shorthand for this kit might be unfixable. That's what happens when a champion becomes a category. And Riot's response to a category they created is silence. They don't fix Azir. They avoid making more Azirs. 6 reworks isn't iteration. It's a designer trying to remember someone they used to know. That was a kit they couldn't fix. The next is something different. Riot decided to fix him by making him into someone else. This is the champion Riot didn't just rework. Riot rewrote him. Different lore, different identity, same name. Aatrox. Aatrox is the champion Riot apologized for displacing. When Aatrox released in June 2013, he was a winged demon warrior, the last of an ancient race called the Darken, though Riot wouldn't fully define what that meant for another 5 years. His most quoted in-game line was this: "Even those who have nothing can still give their lives." That's the Aatrox a generation of players first met. A war hymn with a sword. 5 years later, Riot killed him. In January 2018, Riot Reeve 3, lead producer of the Champions team, wrote in the Champion Roadmap, "We think that Aatrox really isn't holistically living up to his Darken Warlord theme and needs to be rethought from the ground up. We've finally settled on a design direction we're happy with: bloodthirsty, great sword-wielding warlord." The rework hit the PBE in June. Reactions on the Aatrox subreddit were not subtle. A petition thread appeared, r/Aatrox mains, upvote this if you agree on, asking Riot to reconsider. The next part is one of the strangest moments in League dev communication. Rev3 responded on the official boards, and in his own post, he linked directly to the petition. He wasn't dismissing it. He was acknowledging it. Then he shipped the rework anyway. The same board's post included this from Riot Jag, the gameplay lead on the project. "So first off, the brutal truth. Yes, his gameplay is dramatically different from current Aatrox, and yes, that's very intentional. It's very illustrative that in just a patch with no direct buffs, he moved from literally not being picked in a pro game for years to becoming arguably the highest priority top laner in the game. Aatrox is the epitome of a binary champion. That's the gameplay justification." The next quote, from Reeve 3 in the same post, is something Riot has almost never written before or since. "This rework is meant to still be true to that fantasy, and I hope that current Aatrox mains could find something to grab onto there. But that knowledge won't make you feel any better about how drastically his gameplay is changing with this rework. Though I believe in our goals and that new Aatrox delivers on them, at the end of the day, I honestly feel personally uncomfortable displacing you. I'm sorry for that." A lead producer at Riot Games in a public forum post apologizing for making a champion that was going to take something away from the people who loved him. I'm sorry for that. Most companies don't write those 4 words. Riot wrote them in 2018, and what came next changed how they made champions forever. I'm going with the reading that the original Aatrox is gone. I know the Darken retcon technically explains him as a possessed blade, and some of you have a more generous reading of that. The Tumblr essay Runeterra retcons 2, Aatrox and the Darken lays out the full case. Drop your time-stamped argument in the comments. I'll read all of them. If you only know Aatrox from the World Ender cinematic, the corrupted Ascended Sunborn version, you're meeting a character who's already on his second life. The first one didn't survive 2018, the original Aatrox didn't get reworked, he got buried. And nobody held a funeral. There's a longer video buried in this one. Every champion Riot has retconned out of their own lore. Tell me if you want it. There are champions Riot reworks, and there are champions Riot replaces. The hardest part is when they keep the name. That was a champion Riot rewrote. The next 2 are different. They didn't just affect themselves, they trapped every champion that came after. Sylas. Sylas is the champion who forced Riot to rebuild the engine of League of Legends. Released in January 2019. The first champion of the year, designer Blake Squad 5 Smith. The Dalmatian Rebel, the anti-magic prison escapee. The hook, he steals enemy ultimates. Squad 5 had wanted to build a spell-stealing champion for years. He kept asking the engineering team if it was possible. Their answer, in his own words, on Riot's official Origins documentary: "I didn't think that it was technically possible because I had asked some engineers before and they were like, 'No, don't do that, you're crazy.' So he built it anyway. A prototype, janky, half-working. I had a super rough version of the spell that would become Silas's R, and I had to set it up in a really janky way. But pretty much immediately after the first internal playtest, we knew that the ability was awesome." The internal playtest worked. The engineers got the bill. Squad 5 again, in the same documentary. "Every time I see the engineers that helped me on Silas's ultimate, I still apologize and thank them to this day." The lead designer, 6 years later, still apologizing. Because what came next was the actual cost. Riot's own Origins documentary explains what they had to build. Before Silas, the concept of an ability, how a spell runs from start to finish, didn't really exist in League's backend. Most spells existed within an individual champion's scripts, so the game engine didn't understand each ability on its own. So for abilities and their accompanying passives to transfer over to Silas, the engineering team needed to build out those systems and implement them for every champion in the game. For one champion's ultimate, Riot had to refactor every spell in League of Legends. 5 years later, the receipts are still coming in. In 2024, Riot Norak, the dev currently balancing Silas, explained the present-day state in a Discord comment reported by .esports. "The issue isn't design decisions most of the time, it's that the ults weren't designed with Silas in mind. Most of the ults in the game are designed around the champions' kits, and a very large number of them are designed with no AP ratio." That's a Riot dev in 2024, explaining that the ults Riot has been designing for the past 5 years still aren't designed with Silas in mind. The fix is a multi-patch project across every champion ult in the game. Silas isn't a failure. He's a beloved character whose existence cost Riot more than they admit. Tell me below if you think Silas is structurally a regret or a triumph. I'm taking the position that he can be both. Here's why. The engineering refactor that trapped Riot in code is also the reason Viego exists, the reason Ultimate Spellbook exists, the reason Riot can build any future champion who borrows from another. Riot's own words on the wiki: "Silas's challenge paved the way for everything that came after. The prison built the future." That's the part nobody says out loud. Silas trapped Riot in code. The next champion trapped them somewhere worse, in design philosophy. Yuumi. Yuumi is the champion Riot publicly wrote in their own dev blog the words "we're not satisfied" about. By Riot's own published numbers in early 2023, Yuumi was simultaneously a top 3 champion for true new players, a top 20 popularity pick across the entire player base, and a top pro support. No champion had ever held those 3 positions at once. Riot couldn't make her fit one. She fit all 3. That was the problem. Yuumi released in May 2019, a magical cat enchanter who attaches to allies and becomes untargetable while attached, designed by Daniel Stashu Cunningham, voiced by Cassandra Lee Morris, the same actor who voices Nami. For 3 years, she was the highest banned champion at Worlds, 2021, 2022, both. Pros knew what casual players didn't. The W that turned her untargetable wasn't a gimmick. It was a structural problem the rest of the game couldn't compensate for. In December 2022, Riot wrote this: "In short, we're not satisfied with Yuumi's current state and are making progress on a rework for her aimed at reducing some of the things that make her frustrating to play against, while retaining the core gameplay pattern her players have come to love." That's the headline. We're not satisfied, in writing, in their own dev blog. Then the same blog listed, in bullet points, the 4 things wrong with her. Losing lane to Yuumi often feels like losing the game due to her strong scaling. Yuumi's power isn't tied to her own success, so putting Yuumi behind in lane doesn't feel impactful since she can switch partners easily. Laning as an ADC with Yuumi isn't fun due to her weak early game in solo play and tendency to quickly attach to someone else. In pro play, Yuumi lacks exploitable counterplay windows. Riot doesn't post lists like that. Companies don't post lists like that. That's the corporate version of looking in a mirror and saying everything you see. The rework shipped in March 2023. The launch dev blog framed it like this: "Last year we decided that it was healthier for the game to pick one side and support it fully. Translation, she's good for new players, she's miserable for everyone else, and we're going to commit to one of those answers. Riot picked new players. Then 1 month later, in April 2023, Riot disabled Yuumi at MSI, their own champion, banned from their own event. Riot's official statement said the rework wasn't ready for pro play. That's the moment Riot stopped pretending the rework was finished. There's another list I haven't made yet. The champions Riot scrapped before they ever shipped. Aoshin, Cici, Avasha, the ones we never met. If you want that video, let me know. Silas, Yuumi. 2 champions Riot couldn't fix without breaking the game around them. Which leaves us with one more, the one Riot doesn't want to talk about. K'Sante. K'Sante is the champion Riot built to be the future of League of Legends, and then quietly went back, released in November 2022. Marketed as Riot's flagship next-generation tank, high skill, dual form, the pride of Nazuma, Riot Reeve 3 wrote the champion roadmap announcement himself. He described K'Sante like this: Intifos are huge, blunt weapons that can be used defensively, but at any moment he can shatter them, revealing carefully crafted blades capable of tearing through any foe in seconds. That's the marketing copy. Capable of tearing through any foe in seconds. Riot wasn't being cautious. Riot was promising something. The next 2 years are the story of Riot trying to take that promise back. K'Sante was immediately dominant in pro play, repeated nerf and buff cycles through 2023. By October that year, Freak, the balance designer who took over K'Sante, was on Reddit defending his approach. He wrote that 45% win rate wasn't necessarily a failing. Wait until afterwards, he said. We'll handle it. And then, on January 23rd, 2024, Riot laid him off. Not Freak. Riot Llama, the game designer who built K'Sante's W. The man who, in his own words, said Pathmaker was the most challenging part of K'Sante's kit to design. His final tweet, posted the day of the layoffs: It's been a pleasure serving the League player base. I hope Smolder, Skarner, and K'Sante prove to be some of y'all's favorite champions. My only regret is I didn't get to make more. GG Gamers. Beat 2 seconds. Let the tweet sit. The mini rework that shipped 6 months later, a 542-word patch note, the longest single champion patch note in modern League history, was finished by the team that replaced him. That's what the cold open meant. They laid the designer off before the rework was finished. 6 months after that, Freak issued his own apology. In a Reddit comment reported by .esports, he wrote, I was ultimately responsible for every K'Sante line we shipped in the last 6 months, and I chose the wrong goals. I'm sorry for that. K'Sante was Riot's bet on what the next decade of champion design was going to look like. Bigger kits, more skill expression, tank skirmisher hybrids. After K'Sante, the champions Riot has shipped, Briar, Hui, Smolder, Aurora, Mel, Ambessa, have visibly simpler kits. The bet didn't lose. Riot folded. The thing K'Sante was marketed as, Reeve 3's own line about tearing through any foe in seconds, is the thing Freak spent 2 years apologizing for. The marketing copy didn't lie. That was the problem. K'Sante was supposed to be the future. Riot looked at the future and quietly decided to go back. There's a list I left out, and I should say it out loud. Akali, Ziri, Aphelios. I didn't include them because their problems are about numbers. The 6 we just talked about, their problems are about identity, about code, about what Riot thought League was going to be. 6 champions. Some Riot apologized for, some Riot rewrote, some Riot couldn't fix. All 6, in their own way, mourned. If you want me to make the numerical balance version of this video, the champions Riot can't get the numbers right on, separate from the ones whose ideas were wrong, drop a comment. I'll see how much appetite there is. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to channel members. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.